This happened a few weeks ago. I'm Jason, a wildlife photographer. I'd recently lost someone close to me, and I thought a trip to Yellowstone would help me feel better. I set up my camp near the old faithful geyser, surrounded by tall trees. The air was fresh, and I could hear the soft bubbling of springs nearby. It felt peaceful at first, but that changed quickly. On my first night, I sat by the fire, looking through my photos. Everything felt normal, until I started hearing laughter. It was soft and seemed to float in from the woods. I thought it might be some kids, but when I looked around, I was alone. A chill ran down my back, and something didn't feel right. The next days turned strange. I woke up early to catch the wildlife in action. I spotted deer moving through the trees, but then I saw shadows moving quickly. I thought maybe it was a trick of my eyes, but every time I turned to look, nothing was there. My heart raced. I checked the ground and found strange footprints, like human shoes, but they went nowhere. It made me uneasy. As I went through my photos that night, I noticed something odd. In the background of a few pictures, there were shapes. I couldn't see them with my eyes, but they were there, clear in the images. My hands shook a bit as I looked closer. Were they tricks of the light? I didn't know. The unease in my stomach grew. By nightfall, the laughter turned into whispers. They were louder now, almost frantic. I sat by the fire, trying to ignore it, but it felt like they were trying to reach me. Instead of feeling safe, it was like I was being watched. I decided I would leave in the morning. Packing my things felt difficult, like the air had grown heavier. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see someone there. Just shadows, I told myself, but every little sound made my heart race louder. On my way back to the car, I heard a voice. "Why didn't you take my picture?" it asked. I spun around, but nobody was there. Cold ran through me. Was this part of my mind playing tricks? I couldn't tell anymore. I hurried to my car, but something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting. The hairs on my neck stood up, and I felt an urge to run. I fumbled with my keys, and every rustle in the dark made me jump. The feeling followed me out of Yellowstone. I kept thinking about those whispers and those strange shadows. It felt wrong. I can't explain it, but I still hear the laughter sometimes. It haunts me even now. Something is still out there, waiting. I don't think I'll ever return. The weeks passed after my trip to Yellowstone. I tried to put it behind me, but sleep didn't come easy. The laughter, the whispers, they lingered in my mind, tainting my days. I refused to talk about it. I didn't want to sound crazy. One evening, I was going through my gear, determined to analyze my photos more carefully. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table and plugged in my camera. I needed to distract myself. I expected some wildlife shots, pictures of serene landscapes. Instead, when the images loaded, my heart dropped. In every picture from Yellowstone, the whispers I heard seemed to manifest in eerie ways. There were faces in the trees, distorted shapes that looked like they were watching. I leaned closer to the screen, fear creeping back in. I didn't remember noticing them at the time. What were they? I quickly scrolled through more images, my hands trembling. Then I paused suddenly. I recognized something. One face looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. I zoomed in, trying to analyze it. It was sad, maybe angry, but familiar enough to make my stomach churn. Just as I leaned forward to examine it, a noise pulled me from my focus. The sound was a soft tapping, rhythmic, like fingernails on glass. I glanced around the room, my gut tightening. I was alone in the house. My heart raced as I stood slowly, walking towards the window. I pulled the curtain back slightly. Nothing was there, but I still felt that urge to run. When I returned to my laptop, I noticed something new. A message had appeared on the screen. It wasn't anything I typed. It just read, "Why didn't you take me?" My skin prickled with unease. Who or what was it referring to? In a panic, I shut the laptop and grabbed my phone. I needed to talk to someone. I texted my friend Mark, hoping he could calm my nerves. I didn't mention Yellowstone, just asked if he could come over. He replied quickly, "On my way." While I waited, the house felt oddly quiet. I sat on the couch, glancing around. The weight of being watched returned, and I felt like the walls were closing in. As I wrapped my arms around my knees, I heard it again, the faint laughter echoing in the distance. It was impossible, but the sound seemed to be growing louder, creeping under the walls into my reality. Then my phone buzzed, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I looked down. It was Mark, but the text was strange. "I'm here. Let me in." I moved toward the door, but unease nagged at me. How did he get there so fast? I unlocked the door, and just as I opened it a crack, the laughter escalated, now a cacophony of familiar, haunting voices. I froze. Looking back, everything clicked. The figure in my photo, the words on the screen. That's when I saw it. A shadow looming behind Mark. Something wasn't right. I hesitated at the door, my hand trembling on the knob. Mark was standing there, but the shadow behind him warped the light, making him look smaller, twisted. "Sarah?" he called, his voice laced with concern. "Are you okay?" I opened the door wider, barely registering that I had done so. Instinctively, I stepped back, dragging Mark inside. I didn't want whatever was lurking outside to follow him in. As soon as I closed the door, the laughter stopped. An unsettling silence wrapped around us. "What's wrong?" Mark asked, his brow furrowing as he noticed my pale face. I wanted to tell him everything. The photos, the whispers, the shadow. But I held back. I didn't want to sound insane. Instead, I led him to the kitchen, gesturing toward my laptop. "I think I saw something in my pictures." He sat down, scrutinizing my face. "What kind of something? You look like you've seen a ghost." I sighed, taking a breath. "Just look at the photos." As Mark browsed through the images, his expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. He scrolled faster, his eyes widening. "What are these faces? Are you sure you took these?" My stomach turned. I didn't notice them at the time, but now you see them and they look familiar? I nodded, swallowing hard. The laughter returned, but this time it was louder, more urgent, like it was trying to drown out our conversation. I glanced toward the window, paranoia crawling up my spine. "It's like they want me to remember something," I whispered. "Something important." Suddenly, the power flickered in the house. The overhead lights buzzed ominously, then dimmed. It felt like the world outside was shifting in tandem with the eerie shadows moving in the corners of my vision. "I think we should go outside," Mark suggested, his voice steady, though I could see the unease lurking beneath. "No, we can't. Whatever's here isn't just in the pictures." My hands were knotting together as I sensed the urgency building. "It's here with us. It knows." He shot me a skeptical look, but tried to pull me away from the kitchen, toward the door again. "I think we need to face it. It might just be a trick of the light or something." But that's when I saw it again. Something dark scraping against the window behind him. A figure, its features obscured, blending with the shadows. My voice caught in my throat, and I pulled Mark back forcefully. "Look out!" Startled, he turned just in time, his eyes locking with whatever was outside, the laughter now a cacophony of cries that filled the room. I felt the temperature drop as a rush of cold air swept past us, whispering soft, haunting secrets. Then it stopped. Silence. "Did you hear that?" Mark's voice wavered, and I could hardly breathe. I nodded slowly. Then, without warning, my laptop jolted to life again. The screen flickered, and one final message appeared, larger this time. "You should have taken me." I felt Mark's hand tighten around mine. We both turned to face the shadow outside, and that fear in my gut screamed louder than ever. What had I brought home? Before I could move, the lights flickered out completely. Darkness swallowed us whole. I stood in the pitch-black kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. Panic clawed at my throat as I fumbled for Mark's hand. "What do we do?" I whispered,
my voice barely above a breath. "Stay calm," he replied, though I could hear the tension in his tone. "Let's get the candles." He squeezed my hand, guiding us toward the cabinet where my emergency stash was kept.
The dim glow of the candles cast flickering shadows around the kitchen, but they did little to calm the panic that surged within me. The figure at the door was unmistakable. "Jordan?" I croaked out, my voice trembling. Time seemed to stretch as I searched his face for reassurance or explanation. He looked the same, but there was a wildness in his eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. "Sarah." His voice was low, carrying an eerie calm that didn't match the chaos swirling around us. "You need to listen to me." "Why are you here?" Mark stepped forward, positioning himself between me and Jordan. "What do you want?" Jordan's gaze flickered to Mark, but then returned to me. "You're in danger. It's here, and it won't stop until it gets what it wants." I could feel my heart racing again. "What do you mean? What does it want?" He hesitated, glancing toward the shattered window. "The thing in your photos. It needs to complete the connection that was broken. It wants you, Sarah." "No!" I shouted, shaking my head. "I don't even know what that means." Jordan stepped closer, urgency in his movements. "You do know. Deep down, you felt it, haven't you? The pull, the whispers. It's been waiting for you to make a choice." Before I could respond, there was a rustling sound outside, and I felt the air shift again. A strange energy crackled, and the shadows danced at the edges of my vision. Mark surged forward. "Get away from her!" he shouted, his voice filled with protective fury. "Sarah, wait!" I yelled, but it was too late. Jordan held out his hands, palms up, as if trying to calm the storm brewing around us. "This isn't just about you anymore. It knows we're here." A low rumble echoed from outside, shaking the floor beneath our feet. My breath hitched in my throat as I turned toward the noise. The door creaked ominously, straining against whatever unseen force pushed against it. "Run!" Mark shouted suddenly, his eyes wide with fear. Another gust of wind blasted through the broken window, extinguishing several candles and plunging us into darkness again. Panic surged as I felt the cold tendrils of shadow curling around my ankles. I couldn't see what was happening, but I could hear it. The laughter was back, closer and more sinister this time. "Sarah, now!" Mark's voice cut through the chaos, snapping me back into focus. I grabbed his hand, my heart hammering in my chest, and we dashed toward the basement door. Behind us, I felt the weight of something dark and heavy bearing down on us. Just as we reached the door, the shadows lunged forward, and I could almost have heard my name being called in a voice that chilled me to my bones. That was when I knew. Whatever was happening, it had only just begun. We burst through the basement door, slamming it shut behind us. The heavy thud felt like a small victory, but my breath was still coming in sharp rasps. Glancing around, I realized the basement was just as unsettling as the kitchen above. Dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, the walls were cluttered with old boxes and forgotten memories. Mark fumbled for the light switch, and after a few frustrating moments the bulb flickered to life, casting sickly shadows. My heart still raced. "Do you think it's safe down here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's jaw was set tight with determination. "For now, yes, but we can't stay here forever. We need to figure out what that thing wants and how to stop it from finding us." "Jordan, he seemed different," I managed, still processing his warning. "How does he know about all this?" "I don't know," Mark replied, pacing the small room. "But we can't trust him blindly either. He could be a trick, maybe even a part of whatever that thing is." A wave of uncertainty washed over me. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to calm the storm in my mind. "But he was a friend. We can't just dismiss him." "Friends can turn dangerous, especially when dark forces are in play," Mark said, his tone firm. I wanted to argue, but the sharp edge in his voice silenced me. Suddenly, a sound echoed from above. Slow, methodical footsteps. My stomach sank.
The shadows on the stairs seemed to pulse as I imagined whatever was out there making its way down. I exchanged a frantic look with Mark. "Get behind me," he instructed, positioning himself at the base of the stairs. "What are we going to do?" I asked, feeling a surge of panic. "Wait and listen," he replied. "Whatever it is, it's hunting. We can't make a sound." I nodded, forcing myself to breathe quietly. The footsteps stopped above us. For a moment there was only silence, the absence of sound amplifying the dread that hung in the air. Then the faintest whisper broke through the stillness. "Sarah," it called softly, twisting my name like a knife. I fought against the instinct to respond, knowing it was a trap, but my heart clenched painfully in my chest. "Stay down," Mark hissed as I trembled. The voice grew louder, almost pleading. "Sarah, help me!" My heart raced once more, but I couldn't tell if it was the fear or the familiarity of the voice that scared me. "Mark," I whispered urgently, "it sounds like—" "Don't," he snapped. "It's trying to lure you. You can't trust it." A chill crept through me. Just when I thought I understood what was happening, everything shifted again. From above, a loud crash echoed, and the heavy scraping sound of something being dragged filled the air. It was disconcerting, and the ominous presence was closing in. "That's not good," Mark muttered, his grip tightening on my arm. I felt my pulse quicken as the oppressive energy began to multiply. "We need to move, Mark, now!" As we began to back away from the stairs, another crash came from above, followed by a chaotic rustling sound, like something struggling to make its way through the narrow space. And just then, like a tapestry unraveling, I felt a connection snap inside me. A sudden understanding of the depth of the darkness that was drawing near. My eyes widened as I whispered, "It's too late, isn't it?" Then everything went dark. I felt weightless in the darkness, almost suspended in time. Panic surged through me as I tried to regain my bearings. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out any sounds that might come from above. The silence felt like a suffocating blanket. "Mark?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" A moment later, I felt his presence close by, his hand gripping my arm. "He's here," he whispered back. "Just stay close." That small assurance helped, but I was still on edge. The air felt thick with dread. I could hear something moving, a soft scraping sound, like nails against concrete. Whatever was up there had not given up. "Do we go back up?" I asked, fear lacing my words. "No," he replied firmly, "not until we know what's up there. We need to find another way out." I nodded, even though the idea terrified me. I scanned the dark basement, searching for an alternate escape route. In the far corner there was a flicker of light, an old, dirty window barely illuminated by the moon outside. "Look," I pointed, my voice steadier now. "That window might lead to the outside." "Let's check it out." Mark moved toward the faint glow, his posture tense. We edged away from the stairs, stepping carefully over the scattered boxes. I hoped to make no sound. As we approached the window, the scraping noise intensified. It sounded like whatever was lurking above had gotten closer. I held my breath, fighting the urge to turn back. Just then, I felt something brush my cheek. I froze, adrenaline coursing through me as I turned slowly. It was only a cobweb, but the chill of fear didn't leave me. "Hurry," I whispered. Mark knelt beside the window, attempting to pry it open. He grunted as he pushed against the rotting wood. No luck. I could see his frustration. After a few moments, he looked back at me. "It's stuck. We need something to break it." "What about those boxes?" I suggested, pointing to a pile cluttering the floor. "Maybe we can use one of them." He grabbed the nearest one, and as he lifted it, it let out a loud creak. Instantly, the scraping noise stopped. I stilled, dread pooling in my stomach. The silence that followed was somehow worse, like the calm before a storm. Then, from above, I heard another voice, almost a growl, deep and guttural. It didn't sound like Jordan anymore. "That's not good," Mark muttered, looking back at the stairs as if waiting for something to emerge. I could almost feel the energy shift in the room, a growing sense of foreboding. "What do we do now?" My voice shook. "Just keep quiet," he whispered, moving closer to me. We were both acutely aware that any noise could lead it right to us. Just as I turned my gaze back to the window, something moved in the shadows.
A shape loomed there, barely discernible. I blinked, straining to see better. That's when I saw it, two glowing eyes staring straight at us from the dark. "Mark!" My breath hitched in my throat. As he turned to look, there was a crash above. The floorboards creaked ominously, and the rising terror in my chest felt insurmountable. It was time to act, but what could we do against that? We needed to escape, now. The eyes blinked, and I felt like I was staring into the abyss. For a moment, the weight of dread pressed down on me, and I couldn't move. Mark stood frozen beside me, his face a mixture of determination and fear. "Can you see it?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. "Not well enough," he replied, still looking at the shadow. "We have to move. Now." I nodded, fighting against the sense of paralysis that had gripped me. The idea of staying here was unbearable. There was only the glimmer of hope in that window, allowing a faint light to spill across the basement floor. Mark reached for another box, lifting it cautiously. I couldn't take my eyes off the shadow. The eyes glimmered again, and then the shape shifted. It was larger than before, bulkier, as if the darkness was pulling it in towards us. "Get ready," Mark shouted, as he raised the box over his head, ready to strike. I heard the scratching intensify. It wasn't just one sound anymore. It was joined by another, and then another. The noise was chaotic and deafening as it echoed around the basement. "Now!" Mark swung down the box with all his strength against the window. Glass shattered, and I flinched at the sound. He quickly pulled back and motioned for me to follow. The glow from outside seemed brighter now as we moved toward the broken window. I thought I could see the outline of trees in the distance. Freedom was tantalizingly close. Our escape was interrupted with a sudden crash. The shadow lunged forward, closer than I expected. I felt the raw terror shoot through me as the creature let out a horrific screech that pierced the air. "Jump through!" Mark shouted, his voice cutting through my haze of fear. I scrambled to the window, the shards of glass glinting dangerously around me. Mark followed closely behind, shoving me through before I could second-guess myself. I landed hard on the other side, the ground cold and rough against my skin. "Go! Go!" he yelled, finally climbing out after me. We both staggered away from the window, breathless, hearts racing. I glanced back just in time to see the shadow peering through the shattered opening. Its eyes narrowed and locked onto us. The darkness seemed to ripple as it moved, followed by a guttural growl that made my skin crawl. "Keep moving," said Mark, grabbing my wrist and pulling me away from the house. I followed, my legs feeling like lead. We ran into the woods, the trees closing in around us. The thrill of adrenaline coursed through me, but the fear was still there, gnawing at my insides. I had no idea what we had escaped, but it was still out there. "Where do we go now?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "I don't know," he admitted, glancing back toward the house, "but we have to keep moving. It won't stop." I trusted him, but an unsettling thought echoed in my mind. Whatever we had encountered wasn't just a monster. It felt smarter, almost aware. Suddenly, a low howl ripped through the night, making every hair on my body stand on end. "What was that?" I asked, my heart racing again. Mark turned to me, his expression fierce. "I don't know, but we can't stick around to find out." Then everything went dark. The darkness enveloped us like a heavy blanket. I could barely see my own hands in front of me.
Panic surged through me as I stumbled forward, trying to follow Mark's retreating figure. I could hear his hurried breaths, strained and urgent. "Where are you?" I called, my voice barely a whisper in the suffocating black. "Stay close," he sounded, far away, the words almost swallowed by the void. "Look for light." I squinted through the dark, trying to find any glimmer, any hint of safety. My heart raced in time with the echoes of our footsteps crunching on the underbrush. Just ahead, I caught sight of a flicker. It could have been fireflies, or something more. "Mark!" I shouted, urgency pushing me to break the silence. "There's a light!" "Go toward it," he yelled back, and I surged forward, fueled by desperation. Each step felt like it was weighted down with dread, but I pushed through. The light grew more defined as I reached the edge of a small clearing. Just on the outskirts stood a dilapidated cabin, its windows glowing with an eerie yellow light. "Why is it lit?" I breathed, skepticism creeping in. "I don't know." Mark approached, his hand resting on the door handle. I could see his own uncertainty, but we didn't have a better option. We stepped inside, the door creaking ominously as we pushed it open. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of damp wood, and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I glanced around, and the glow illuminated odd shapes on the walls. "Look at this," Mark called, pointing to the scraps of newspaper taped to the walls. Each one chronicled bizarre events, disappearances, strange sounds at night, all linked to this area. My throat tightened as I absorbed the unsettling details. "Oh, God," I whispered, scanning the articles. They hinted at supernatural explanations, predators that were never found, shadows that stalked the woods. Mark's face paled as he flipped through the pages, the reality of our location settling in.
Are we safe?" Before I could answer, a noise erupted from outside, a low, growling sound that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't the howl from before. This was something closer, something that felt more threatening. "Someone's out there," I murmur, my voice shaking. "We need to hide." Mark nodded, and we crouched down behind a rickety table, the shadows feeling more oppressive than ever. Through the window I could see movement, a dark shape shifting among the trees, stalking the cabin. It had followed us. In that moment I realized our escape was far from over, but my mind raced, trying to think through the spirals of fear. I had to know what we were dealing with. Then I heard a voice, soft yet sharp, cutting through the tension. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. Someone was in the cabin with us. I felt the blood drain from my face as the voice echoed in the dim light. I couldn't tell if it was coming from inside the cabin or outside. Mark held my arm tighter, anxiety burning in his gaze. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I shook my head, unable to process what I had just heard. The shadows outside seemed to thicken, as if they were alive and aware. I forced my eyes to the window, desperate to catch a glimpse of whatever lurked beyond, but all I saw was that inky darkness pressing in closer. "Should we see who it is?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. The faint glow from the candles we carried felt fragile in the face of the night. "No, we can't," I hissed, fear boiling inside me. "What if it's—" I didn't want to finish the thought. The idea that something or someone was deliberately trying to ensnare us sent my heart racing. Then the shadow outside shifted again, darting closer to the house. The unmistakable sound of something snapping, branches or worse, reverberated in the stillness. "I think it knows we're in here," Mark said, his breathing quickening. "There's no time." Suddenly the voice spoke again, softer this time, but with an odd familiarity. "Help me, please." I turned to Mark, panic flooding my senses. "Do you think it's a trick? What if it's trying to lure us out?" "I don't know," he said, fear lacing his words. "But what if it's someone who really needs help?" "Or worse," I replied. "What if it's what we think it is?" But before we could solidify a plan, the figure stepped into the light filtering through the window, revealing a gaunt face etched by despair, framed by wild hair. My breath caught. "Jordan? Sarah," he rasped, his eyes wild with urgency. "You need to get out of here, now." "What happened to you?" I exclaimed, my heart lurching as I scanned his disheveled appearance. He looked as if he'd been wandering the woods for days. "There's no time," he insisted, his voice a frenzied whisper. "It's coming. You can't stay here." "Then what should we do?" Mark pressed, edging us closer to the door. "If it's hunting you as well, it wants something from you." Jordan blurted, his hands trembling. "Your connection with the darkness. It won't stop until it gets it." "I don't understand," I stammered. "What connection? What does it want?" "It wants what it lost. You were supposed to take its picture," he explained, fear flickering across his features. "Not just see it, but capture its essence. It needs to be remembered." In that moment, everything clicked. The photos, the echoes. But I thought it was just a legend. The memory of the laughter and shadows came crashing back, the chilling pull that had drawn me into the woods. Jordan stepped forward, urgency propelling him. "That's exactly it. It thrives on memory, on being remembered. You have to either face it or perish in its chaos." Suddenly the shadows surrounding the cabin twisted, dark tendrils creeping nearer. The growling sound thrummed closer, more violent, and it felt like the very walls were vibrating with unseen energy. "Now," Jordan shouted, his voice breaking through to the core of my fear. "You have to make it see you. Get your camera." "But what if—" I hesitated. "Do it," Mark urged. "If this thing can be stopped, we need to try." With no other option, I nodded and stumbled towards my pack. Grabbing my camera, I turned just in time to see the darkness swirling toward the door. "There's no time. Get ready. It's coming," Jordan yelled, barely keeping his composure. As the door burst open, I instinctively raised my camera, heart pounding. The shadows spilled into the room, swirling and pulsating, morphing into 1,000 faces I once thought I had imagined. "Show yourself," I called into the void, my voice shaking but my resolve hardening. "I'll remember you." The shadows shuddered, and the cacophony of laughter rose to a deafening roar, a clamor of voices bridging out amidst my uncertainty. I lifted the camera higher, fingers trembling on the shutter. In that moment, as the darkness rushed towards me, I felt something shift in the air, a thickening of tension followed by a hollow stillness. Time seemed to slow as the shadows gave way to a form, warped and grotesque, yet undeniably real. I pressed the shutter, a moment captured, a flash of light illuminating the darkness. The shadows recoiled, and a horrific roar echoed through the cabin, an anguished cry that resonated deep within the pit of my being. And just like that, the walls of the cabin trembled. The dark thing flickered, and for a brief second, the faces in the photos emerged in full clarity. Lost souls caught in an endless loop, now freed into the night. Suddenly the air shifted. It felt lighter, and the cacophony subsided. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the form dissolved, leaving behind silence that engulfed the room. I gasped, collapsing against the table as the ambient light from the outside flooded back in. Mark grabbed my shoulder, disbelief mixing with awe. "Did we—" he began, but the question lingered. Jordan fell to his knees, crossing himself in relief.